Hey there everyone, I'm 13 News Now meteorologist Rachael Peart. I'm going to do a tropical update, look at what is brewing and stewing in the Atlantic Basin right now. So let's go ahead and pull up those graphics. We of course are talking about tropical storms Laura and Marco. And again, this is your Saturday evening update for August 22nd, 2020. So two tropical storms out there right now. And a change from earlier today is that Marco's track has now moved farther eastward. And both of these storms yesterday set new records for both the earliest L-named storm and M-named storm in the Atlantic Basin. And other than Laura and Marco, which are still very potentially dangerous storms for the U.S., for Cuba, for Hispaniola, and have dumped quite a bit of rain into Central America. Other than those two storms that we are continuously watching, the Atlantic Basin is quiet. So Marco is the fourth named storm this August, so August 2020. And the last time we had 4 or more storms named in the Atlantic was back in 2012. And that August had 8 total named storms form during that 31-day period. So doesn't look like we're going to reach that statistic, but just a little factoid for you there. So here's a look at the tropical satellite. This is the last 12-hour loop. You can see Marco back off to the west in between the Yucatan and also the western point of Cuba. And then you can see a little bit farther to the right side of your screen, that is Tropical Storm Laura. The center of that is actually now pulled away from Puerto Rico, but you can see that cloud deck of Laura still impacting parts of Puerto Rico and now impacting parts of the Dominican Republic and also western parts of Haiti as well. So do want to change things up with the tropical satellite here. Where you're seeing the blacks and the whites, that's where we're seeing quite a bit of storm development. And you can also see the difference in the shape of the two storms. You're seeing that Marco actually looking a little bit more on the ragged, disorganized side versus Laura, which especially in the first few frames here, looking quite organized and definitely looking more like what you would expect of a tropical storm. So I'm going to switch this over. This is actually the water vapor imagery. So this shows you where the moist versus the dry air is located in the basin. And of course, you can still see where Marco and Laura are located, but you see back off to the north and west of Laura, a little bit of dry air there. And then also looking toward Marco, there is quite a bit of dry air just off to the north and west of that storm as well. And something else you're noticing with Marco, looks like it's being pulled apart just a little bit, like someone taking a cotton ball and kind of just pulling out the strings, and you see how it kind of elongates. So we're seeing that right now with Marco. That's due to the shear that's actually currently in place in the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see quite some strong shear as we look towards areas of western Florida up through Atlantic, western parts of the Carolinas up through western Virginia as well. So that's actually interacting with Marco, that shear, the change in wind direction and the change in wind speed with height interacting with Tropical Storm Marco. Now, something working in both storms' favor is the sea surface temperatures. Now, typically we look for sea surface temperatures right around 80 degrees to sustain or help with strengthening of these storms. Well, we definitely have that in place right now across the Atlantic Basin. I do have one icon there, 83 degrees just south of Puerto Rico in those waters. So we're looking at low to mid 80s in those areas. Then in between the Yucatan and western Cuba, 85 degrees. That's right around where Marco is sitting right now. And then heading up into the Gulf Coast just south of the Louisiana coastline, we have mid to upper 80s right there, 86 degrees for the sea surface temperatures in that location. So the factors in play, summing up those last few graphics, land interaction, that's going to be more of an impact for Laura over the next couple of days. We'll look at the track kind of be possibly affecting 3 different countries over the next couple of days. So that helps to keep the storm from strengthening too much. And then also the wind shear that we talked about with Marco, as it now starts to really enter the Gulf of Mexico and continuing its mainly northward movement, we're going to see it interacting with that wind shear. And of course, it has the sea surface temperatures working in its favor at this point, and not expecting that to change too much. Let's go ahead and check in on Tropical Storm Laura, the 5 p.m. advisory. Those winds at 50 miles an hour, gusting to 65, moving west at 18 miles an hour, 100 miles west of Puerto Rico, and 125 miles east-southeast of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. So this storm is moving at 18 miles an hour, and it's going to be continuing to move very quickly. You saw it moved over Dominican Republic, possibly parts of Haiti, going to be moving over Cuba as well, keeping it on that tropical storm strength and below that hurricane threshold. But as it moves into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, paused it here at 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, Category 1 hurricane, low-end Category 1 hurricane for the forecast there, 75 miles an hour. As we continue this, you actually do see some watches and warnings in place for the Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama coastlines. That is not for Laura at this point. That is for Marco. We'll take a look at why in just a second. Now, you are seeing Louisiana, Mississippi, parts of Alabama, and still parts of Texas included in Laura's path by Wednesday. Of course, as we get farther out, the uncertainty becomes more and more. The uncertainty increases, rather, but we could be talking about a Category 1 hurricane landfall on Wednesday somewhere in the Gulf, but right now we have Louisiana right in the middle of that cone. So definitely keeping an eye for our neighbors in Louisiana for the midweek, but bringing it a little bit closer to the current point in time. Back to Tropical Storm Marco, moving north-northwest at 13, 50 miles west of the western tip of Cuba, and 540 miles south-southeast right now of the mouth of the Mississippi River. Those winds are at 65 miles an hour, gusting to 75. Let's go ahead and play out Marco's track, expecting it to become a Category 1 storm by Sunday afternoon, so within the next 24 hours of when we're recording this Category 1 hurricane. It continues over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, potentially impacting the Gulf Coast as a Category 1 hurricane, but on Monday versus Laura, when we're going to be watching for a more midweek landfall for that storm. Now, the change with Marco is that the past couple of runs have had the outlook a little bit farther to the west, but now this has moved eastward, so we are going to be watching again for our neighbors in Louisiana. We have Louisiana right in the middle, New Orleans right in the middle of that cone of uncertainty for Monday, and of course, Monday's closer than Wednesday, so the uncertainty for Monday's forecast is a little bit less than that uncertainty for Wednesday's forecast, when we're going to be looking at Laura making landfall in the United States. So I mentioned the watches and warnings were for Marco at this point, not so much for Laura. Here's a look at the hurricane watches. You do see New Orleans pretty much right in the center part of your screen there, and you also do have tropical storm watches for parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and also into Alabama. Currently, no watches or warnings in place for Florida, but of course that could change as we start to see things becoming more and more clear over the next 24 to 48 hours with both of these systems. Now, I do want to talk about storm surge watches. Those are also in also in effect for Louisiana, Mississippi, and also for Alabama as well. So we're looking at Biloxi, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama, and you do see New Orleans, Louisiana in that as well. Again, no storm surge alerts in place for the Florida coastline at this point. Now, just a little bit of a refresher on some tropical terminology. That tropical storm watch, hurricane watch, is that heads up for 48 hours in advance. Now, we could see those for Marco upgraded to a warning once we get a little bit closer. The National Hurricane Center was talking about how soon they were thinking of upgrading that to a warning, as we are continuing to watch that uncertainty decrease as we move closer and closer to landfall time frame. And storm surge is the rising water associated with low pressure. I also do want to talk about potential rainfall from the next week or so, heading into about Thursday. Take a look at the cities there off to the right side of your screen. We're going to be watching areas like, of course, Biloxi, Mobile, Thibodaux in Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana, and also Bay St. Louis. That's the area in red in Mississippi, just above the N and the S. That's right around where Bay St. Louis is in Mississippi. So we are going to be watching those areas for some potentially heavy rainfall over the next 5 to 6 days. Now, I do want to bring your attention to this. This has kind of been a talk over the past couple of days. Two landfalling storms very close in time frame to each other. Now, a little bit closer to the current time than what I'm going to talk about in just a second was back in 2004, close landfall between Tropical Storm Bonnie and then also Hurricane Charlie in August in 2004. Now, Bonnie made landfall just 22 hours before Charlie did, and that was the first time on record that two tropical cyclones had made landfall in the same state within 24 hours. As mentioned, we're not looking at that 24-hour or less time frame for Laura and Marco, but just a little factoid for you to think about there. And then we're also going to be talking about this potential double trouble as we're looking towards Louisiana and then also the Gulf Coast states, because we still can see some changes with these two storms. So just saying right now that Laura and Marco will impact the Gulf Coast states. Exactly where is still to be determined, whether or not both storms impact the same state, and with a landfall still to be determined. Now, I do want to talk about also record lowest time between two landfalling hurricanes is just 23 hours. Now, that was all the way back in 1933 with the Treasure Coast and also the Cuba-Brownsville hurricanes. Now, those were both Category 3 hurricanes, but because we're talking about Category 1 hurricanes, I don't want you to get in your head that these are not going to really make an impact, because with watches already in place, obviously these are going to make an impact, and people in those locations should definitely be preparing if you have not prepared already. It's August 22nd right now, and in the month of August, we typically see right around 27% of our named storms during the hurricane season. Peak hurricane season still is not here yet. September, we typically see right around 34% of our named storms for the entire season. So with two named tropical storms right now in the Atlantic basin, we still have some time to go for things to continue to become maybe a little bit more active. So of course, we'll continue to watch that as we move through the next few months, and definitely in September as well. So if you want to find me on social media, you can find me here on Facebook, Instagram, and also on Twitter. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to 13 News Now here on YouTube, and also find us on social media as well for more updates from our team. We are the most accurate forecast in Hampton Roads, which is in southeastern Virginia. We also serve northeastern North Carolina as well. So subscribe to the 13 News Now YouTube channel so that you don't miss a video, a tropical update, or any other outlooks that we might put out here on this platform. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a beautiful and blessed day.